So I hope you guys have seen at the library we have mask kits for this month's Take and Make craft. This is what they look like. They have this nice little instruction thing, and it's front and back instructions that kind of gives you an overview on how it's supposed to be made. Tells you what's in the kit. So in here we've got 2 different pieces of fabric, and because they're different patterns, these masks are going to be reversible. So you can wear it on one side one day, and then you can flip it and wear it on the other side another day. Also in your bag, you're going to have 2 pieces of elastic, just to attach it like here. So I'm going to set this bag aside. I'm going to show you guys how to do it. I'm not a seamstress, but that just shows that just about anybody can make this. I can barely do a back stitch and a running stitch. I can keep things together. That's about it. It's not the most neat thing you've ever seen, but whatever. So this one has Star Wars print. I have a whole bunch of different prints too. So this one has Star Wars. I have a floral print. I have another Star Wars one. And then I even have a Hufflepuff one here. And these are just examples of different stages of the sewing process that I'm going to show you. And there are plenty of kits left over, so please come and grab one. This is also a great thing. I know a lot of moms are having their kids at home a lot, and a lot of dads are having their kids at home a lot, especially if you have a teenager. Maybe you want to give them a home ec lesson, and you can take a kit home from them, and you guys can make Star Wars masks and Harry Potter masks. And this will be a nice home ec lesson for boys and girls to learn how to do a basic stitch, which I'm going to show you how I put this together. So we're going to start with our fabric. And before we do anything, I want to lay it on the table just to see it the right sides up. So I want to see the right side fabric. I can clearly tell the wrong side and the right side. I can see Chewy on this side. I cannot see him on this side. So, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to lay a piece of elastic down right here. Seems counterintuitive, but I promise it's going to make sense. The next thing I'm going to do is flip our other side over, and I'm going to lay it on top of it like this. Now, it doesn't matter if it's entirely even, just get it as even as possible. And if you have pins to hold the 2 pieces of fabric together, I would suggest using them. I do not, so I'm going to show you guys how I do it without having any pins. I have them at home. I don't have them at the library. So I'm going to take my needle, if I can pick it up. Apparently I can't pick it up. Okay. And I've already taken my thread. I'm going to need more thread than this probably. You're probably going to have to re-thread your needle a couple times. And this is part of the things that you will need that's not included. So you'll need thread, any color, whatever color you want. The only time that the color of the stitching is going to matter is when you finish the mask. You're going to see the stitching on the outside where the pleats are at. And maybe a little bit down here on the corner where you close the fabric up. And we'll talk about that in a second. So you'll take your, I just almost call this string. No, it's not string, it's thread. You'll take your thread and you'll thread it through your needle, and then you'll tie it in a knot at the bottom so it's double. Also not in your kit, you'll need scissors. I suggest kind of a good pair. These are my favorite. Your whole thing of thread and your sewing needle. So I've laid my elastic in between these 2. Do not do what I did. A couple times I have accidentally sewn the elastic to the outside. And then when I went to turn the fabric right side out, my elastic was on the wrong way. So make sure your elastic is inside the fabric. So you're going to start it up here. We're going to stitch it down. We're going to stitch all the way down here. And then we're going to grab the elastic, the other end of it, and thread it through this way. So it's going to be attached, but it's going to be attached on the insides of the fabric. So facing this way. So it's going to make a giant C this way. Don't put it on the outside of the fabric. So I'm just going to show you guys how to start this one, and then we'll move on and we'll show you how to do the next step. So I'm just going to hit the elastic and then my 2 pieces of fabric, thread it all the way through, make sure it's all the way through. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to make kind of a little X pattern. This does not have to be neat. Let's get that out of the way. This does not have to be neat. You are not going to see this. It is not going to matter. It's going to be on the inside of the mask. Unless you rip open your masks, it's not going to be seen. So I'm just going back and forth, maybe 7 or 8 times, hitting different parts of the elastic. This is a little bit difficult to get the needle through, but that's okay. Maybe a thimble will work and help a little bit better. And I'm just going back and forth. Yeah, see, it's really difficult to get the needle through. That's okay. So I'm just going back and forth. And then what I'm going to do, this is important. Once I think it's secure, I'm going to flip this back, this one's fabric back, and I'm going to hold on to this and pull as hard as I can. And you see how the elastic's not going anywhere? The stitches are keeping it in place. That's what we want. That's what we want. All 4 times we do that. So I'm just going to show you guys a couple of the basic stitches that you're going to do throughout the entire perimeter of it. So we want to make sure our elastic stays there. And we want to make sure it's kind of pointing this way. So while we're doing stitches down here, we don't want our elastic to get caught in those stitches. If you're doing this with a sewing machine, it's the exact same principle, except you'll be able to do it a lot faster. So let me straighten up my fabric here. And these 2 pieces are not exact, but that's okay. So I'm going to continue the stitch that we started. So a running stitch would be if you were to put the needle in one way and towards this way. And then a running stitch would be if you were to bring it back the other way, again, towards this way. But we're going to do a back stitch. And a back stitch would be you put it going forward one way, and then on the opposite end, you're going to do it backwards. So I'm not sure how to describe the pattern that it makes, but you would do it backwards. So I'm going to put it in forwards, and it might be a little bit difficult to see, maybe 1/4 of an inch from where that other stitch was. I'm going to pull it through, and then on the back, I'm going to meet that other stitch that I did. And it may be difficult to see. I don't know if you can, but I'm going to meet the stitch that I did already and pull it through again. And what that's going to do is it's going to make a more secure stitch. So when you pull the fabric, it's not going to come apart. So I'm just going to keep doing that. So I'm going to go forward 1/4 of an inch. So you can, well, I didn't put it in the right way. 1/4 of an inch. And you can see where that thread came out versus where the other stitch was. So now I'm going to come back and meet that other stitch. Let's not get my hair caught on it. Okay, so if you need to look up a tutorial on YouTube how to do a back stitch. And don't make your thread too long because stuff like that might happen. So again, I'm just going to do 1/4 of an inch. And again, it does not have to be straight. This is a little bigger than 1/4 of an inch, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to meet that stitch right there. You guys will see what I'm talking about in a second when I show you the next example. So you're going to continue to do that until you get to this side, and you're going to leave maybe a fingertips length. And you're going to attach, you're going to reach and flip this back. And what you'll do is you'll make sure that your elastic is straight. So make sure it's straight like this. We don't want it to be all nice and twisted because it'll get irritated behind your ear. So what we're going to do is take this, and remember this will all be stitched down except for maybe a fingertips length here. And you're going to take it and lay it like this. And then you'll flip it out. And you will do the exact same thing to this side as you did to this other side. You will stitch your elastic down the exact same way, 5 or 6 times, back and forth, crisscrossing, making a little X pattern, making a box. All of those are going to make it a little bit more secure. And you'll stitch that down there and making sure the elastic is on the inside so you can see kind of through this fabric where the elastic's at is away from this edge, although would have already been stitched down. But we're going to keep it on the inside. I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. So this is one I did earlier. It's not the most even thing I've done. There's kind of a little bit of scraggles and I got a little crooked, but that's okay. It's perfectly fine. So I've stitched all the way around. You can see it looks like a lot of thread. That's good. That's what we want. And then the other side, it looks a little bit like less thread. So this is where I did it backwards. And then this is where I did it forwards. So when I came back up, my needle came through the stitch I had already done on this side, which is going to make it even more secure. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I stitched my pieces together, my elastic's on the inside, and then I got to this point to where I have about this much left. So we want to leave this. We want to go ahead and tie off our little knot so we don't need this thread anymore. So, and now what we're going to do is we're going to turn it out. And you see how that elastic is in there? And I'm just going to pull that, and it's already starting to do some of the work for me. I'm just going to shove all of that in there. I'm going to look for the other piece of elastic, and I'm just going to pull it. And that is what we want. So those stitches that we made earlier don't matter. It looks kind of like a pillowcase and it's a little bit crooked, but that's fine because once we do the pleats, it's not going to matter. So that's how you turn it out. And our elastic is super secure because we did all those stitches on them too, so they're not going anywhere. I'm sure if I pulled them hard enough, they would rip. But so that's really secure. All of our stitches are inside. You can see I can pull. Let me pull a finished edge. Yeah, so I can pull this and it's not going anywhere. See, if I pull hard enough, those stitches are coming out, but you can't really see those stitches. So it doesn't matter if they look pretty, as long as they're generally straight, it's okay. And again, this is gonna be reversible. So that leaves us the question, what do we do with this? So I like to tuck it in, and it'll be kind of easy because the fabric already wants to follow that line. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna stitch this shut. So it's gonna be the same way that we did it with the other one. So we're just gonna stitch it shut doing the same exact stitch. You could do a whip stitch, which is just kind of like around it. But a back stitch is probably the best thing as well. So you're just gonna stitch that side, and you will be able to see that seam, but that's okay. Again, I'm not a seamstress. I can't draw a straight line, let alone sew a straight line. I just do my best. So that's what the next stage of your project is gonna look like, and you can kind of tell how it's gonna take form. So the next thing we need to talk about, pleats. So this pattern requires pleats. I've already done 2 pleats on this side, and you can tell the thread is really not that great here. My stitching is really terrible here. That's okay because it's not going anywhere, and that's the point. So I've already done pleats on one side. It helps if you do the pleats on one side and then do them on the other, because your fabric's already gonna wanna take that shape. See, it's already gonna wanna match and be relatively straight. So, and it's gonna look like that on both sides. So that is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna cut my thread off of this one real quick, and I'll come back to that and finish that later. So I'm gonna take my thread, I'm gonna just knot it at the ends. I normally knot mine twice. Fun fact, my brother was in JROTC in high school, and I didn't realize that sewing came in handy for something like that, but they would have to sew their berets down for competitions. And I've never seen so many men sewing hats in the same room. It's kind of interesting. So sewing is not just for girls. I have all this excess stuff from fraying. Okay, so how I did this one side is I just pleated it to where the pleats matched each other. There's not a space in between the pleats, so I could just stitch straight across and not have to worry about cutting the thread and knotting it and stuff like that. So I just made my pleats right next to each other, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. And in a sewing machine, again, this would go a lot easier. Sewing machines hate me. I much prefer hand stitching, but again, that's just me. So, to do a pleat, I'm kind of do this evenly. So it's maybe an inch or two down. Okay, so this edge regularly is 6 inches. So we're just going to, it helps if you pull from the other side, and I'm going to pull and I just pinch, and I'm just going to lay it flat, and then I'm going to make sure that it's straight. So I'm holding this pleat over here and this one, the one that it matches. I'm just going to make sure it's straight, which it looks like that bottom edge is straight. And just to be sure, I'm actually going to adjust my pleat a little bit, and I'm going to make another one while I'm holding the other one. How did I do that? That's how I did that. See, that's why we want to make sure, because I made that one pleat too high, and we don't want to do that because then it's going to sit wonky in your face. So you want to make sure they're even. It's really hard to do this with one hand, but okay, see, that's relatively even on both sides here, and I can't really show you because I'm holding them, but there are my pleats, and I'm holding them. So they're right next to each other. It's just pinched fabric, and this is just how you pleat it so it can form to your face a little bit better, because this flat piece of fabric is not going to form to your face at all. It's just going to sit, and it's going to be wide gapes on the side of your face, and we don't want that. So we're going to do this, and I'm going to do my best to hold these pleats in place and not drop my needle, to hold these pleats in place while I stitch it. So again, pins would be helpful here. A safety pin might work too. If you don't have actual sewing pins, if you have a spare needle, just be very careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the top part of this pleat right here. And this is probably the hardest part because you're pushing through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 layers of fabric and stitches probably. So I'm going to push it through and thread it all the way through. I'm going to do the same stitch. So I've gone through once. I'm going to go forward. And this is where my stitches tend to get a little uneven. So I've gone forward once, and now I'm going to go back. So I'm going to go back to that knot. Put my needle right next to it and push it through. Okay. And I pushed it through all the way. I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to go up a little bit more. Push it through. You can see where that one stitch ended. It's really small, but that's okay. You see where that one stitch ended, and then where I'm going to put it back. Oop, we don't want that to happen. Okay. So, yeah, make sure your thread's all the way through before you do another stitch, because then it's going to be really hard to do. So I'm just going to keep going forward and backward. And I'm kind of losing that pleat over there, but that's okay, because I'll have this pleat as a guide. And these stitches are a lot cleaner than my other ones because I'm taking my time. It takes me about an hour to do one. So if you got some free time in your hands, come pick up a library kit. It's free and it's kind of fun. I made one of these a couple weeks ago, and I watched WandaVision while I did it. So it's not that difficult. Oop. Let's see if I can get that to be a little bit straighter. Okay, so there's my one pleat, and it's not really going anywhere. You can see it's kind of tight. Okay, and now we can see what that whole pleat looks like, right? So now it's going to look a little bit better once I make that other pleat. And now we can see kind of what the whole thing is going to look like. Like I said, if this side isn't quite the same length as this side, that's okay. Again, it's going to expand on your face, and what normally, like the mask I'm wearing now, it matters if it fits here, more so here, because so here's going to be shorter because of these pleats, and it's going to matter a little less here, so if you can't get it quite straight, but it's going to cover from your nose to your chin. So I'm just going to keep going with these stitches What side am I on? That side. Let's not stitch down my elastic. So I'm just gonna keep going. And I'm gonna keep going so I can finish this mask, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And then I'm just gonna go straight into the next pleat. And I'm just holding it, again, if you have something like a safety pin or sewing pins to hold it in place, it'll be a little bit easier. Your fabric's less likely to move if you have pins in it. Again, that's just me, and I'm just continuing doing a back stitch. It may help if you have a thimble. Pushing it through the pleats is a little bit difficult, but other than that, it's really pretty easy. It would be a lot easier with a sewing machine. Priscilla made some last year on a sewing machine, and she's fantastic with a sewing machine. Every time I use mine, mine breaks on me. So we're doing things by hand. All right. And that is basically how you do it. And that's how it's going to show up. You can see how this side's a little bit shorter than that side, but that's okay. Again, when we put it on, it's going to expand here, and those sides aren't going to matter so much. And the way you would finish it is you would take your needle. Let me make sure it's on the right side. I'm not done sewing this plate, so I'm not actually going to make this knot. But you would take your needle, and my needle's a little bit bent, but that's okay. And what I do is I wrap my needle around this thread that's coming from the fabric once or twice, and then I pull my needle through, and I put my finger on that knot that I made, and then I pull it all the way tight. I'm not going to do that because I'm not done, and I'll finish this later. But that's how you would just make a knot. You would pull it tight. And then when you're done with it, you've got all of these ends here, like this thing that's gonna stick out and come across your face. You just find where the knot is, and you'll cut very carefully right above it. And now you can't really see that. You have this little scrap. And this is what it looks like when it's finished. So you can see that it's generally the same size. It's not, oh, I'm holding it upside down. It's not perfect, but that's okay. You can see how it would expand on your face. I would put it on now, but I don't want to take this off. You can see how it would expand on your face. You could even sew in a little metal piece when you're making this, so you can make it to where you can conform it to your nose, and they are reversible. So I have a Hufflepuff side, and I have a side with daisies. And this is super secure. It's ready to go. And these are really stretchy. I like it. We can see our pleats clearly. You can see how it's going to work. And as you wear it, this fabric's going to stick together a little bit more. And as you wash it, it's going to stick together a little bit better. You can also see where we closed that up, where that stitch is. It's kind of an ugly stitch. That's okay. It's not going to be that noticeable. And there it is on the other side. But there it is. There's a mask, and that's how you make it with our kits here at the library. So I hope you guys like this. I really enjoyed making this program for you guys. I think I picked some really fun fabrics, and I hope you guys like them. We have some florals, we have Harry Potter, we have Star Wars. This one has little squirrels on it. All sorts of fun prints. You can mix and match if you have yourself, and maybe you have a teenager that you want to have a mask. You guys can mix and match. Again, these are up at the reference desk, so if you just want to come by the library and say, hey, I'd like a mask kit, you can just go up to the reference desk and they'll be happy to give you one. There are plenty left. There are paper instructions in here, and you can always refer to this video on Facebook and on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. I've enjoyed it. Have a great day.